How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your February 2019 horoscope for Libra and Libra Sun and Rising. How's it going, guys? I do think that this month is going to be a little bit easier for you than last month. Last month you had those eclipses going on in your fourth house, which could have brought some dramatic events. However, this month, as we're in Aquarius season and things shift into Pisces season, things are going to be a little bit more susceptible to change, but that change won't be so unharmonious. It'll be quite flow with, and it'll be a reconstruction of things in a way that isn't necessarily so hands-on, but more, again, flow with, natural things kind of going along the way they are. So with that being said, let's kind of go into the horoscope. The first thing that's really happening in February is on February 3rd, we have Venus entering Capricorn. So Venus has been in Sagittarius, she's been next to Jupiter, she's been in your third house for quite some time, which has been fun. However, as Venus goes into Capricorn, Venus, where we're talking about the planet of value, we're talking about the planet of relationships and not creation in the sense of, oh, this is what I'm creating. It does have to do with that, but Venus likes to bring things together. She likes to combine. She likes to, where Mars likes to separate, Venus conjoins things together. As Venus is in Capricorn, she's really valuing and wanting to bring things together in the sense of what is the framework, what is the structure, what are the contracts around things? What is the unspoken contract, the nonverbal agreement almost on how you interact with people, how you value things, what's more efficient and effective in the way that you do put value to things, where are you placing that value? And Venus is going to be in your fourth house, which is about your home life, your family life, your private life. It has to do with your parents and your heritage. It has to do with where you center yourself. And so as Venus is going through this point, this is really putting a lot of value on what needs to be constructed, what needs to be fixed, with sort of more of a TLC type fix within that context of your home life and your parents and your family life. Venus going through this area of your fourth house is bringing a lot more love, a lot more dedication, a lot more commitment. In that area. Venus likes to play by the rules when she's in the sign of Capricorn. That's kind of Saturn's whole deal while he's in Capricorn. So as we go through that, and we'll be talking a lot more about that because there's going to be a couple more bigger aspects to Venus. However, moving forward onto the next day on February 4th, we have the full moon the new moon in Aquarius. This is happening in your fifth house, where we're talking about love, not necessarily relationships as in the relationship, but love and intimacy and sex. That's more of the fifth house things, and so you can tie that into relationships. However, the fifth house has to do with creativity and hobbies, like your passions and art and music. It has to do with children, because you also create those. Now, with this new moon in Aquarius happening, this is kind of clearing out the energy, kind of giving you a clean new slate within that area. What needs to be addressed in that area? Where do you need to detach away from a certain perspective and gain a greater perspective onto things? And how can you connect the dots a little bit better? How can you really connect what it is that you want to pursue, what it is that you kind of want to take things in the direction, or I should say, how you want to take things, what direction you want to take things. As the new moon in Aquarius happens, this is, of course, resetting intentions, putting all the energy right there. But this is about Aquarius, and this is about, Aquarius deals with detachment, isolation, alienation. And it's a Saturn-ruled sign where it has to do with limits and barriers and intellect and knowledge and, maturity and things like that. So this new moon is really about really looking at that area of your life, the fifth house of children, of love, sex, fun stuff, and creativity, and going, where do I want to connect myself into this? What part of this do I want to connect myself into, and what does connecting into something look like? That new moon in Aquarius is kind of cleaning it out and letting you connect into more things. So with that being said, a couple of days later, almost a week later, the next big thing that we have going on is on February 10th, we have Mercury entering Pisces, which is a big deal because Mercury is going to later on retrograde in Pisces. But as Mercury enters Pisces, he's entering his detriment. He doesn't work too well in Pisces. He'd rather be in Gemini or Virgo, does not work well in Pisces. And he's going to be going into the sixth house, where we're talking about your sense of service to this world, your environment, your daily habits, your routine, your sense of, I already said your sense of service, but the sixth house is what are you doing every day? What does your health look like? How do things fall apart and break? That's what the sixth house is known for. And as we have Mercury going through this area, Mercury, the messenger, the communicator, he's in his detriment sign of Pisces, where it's really difficult for him to clearly communicate the message that he wants to. And you're going to find this happening in the area of maybe your work or of your routine. You're maybe going to see things that, like maybe this needs to change up. Maybe this isn't working. What are you not seeing or understanding clearly in that area? And that's going to be Mercury's big theme as he goes into Pisces. But the idea of what are you doing every single day, your health, your habits, routine. With Mercury going through Pisces, it's going to be a little bit of a confusing time. However, that's going to be more mentally activated. Like that focus is going to be there. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. That's if you're wondering why I'm like just skipping over it, because a lot to talk about with Mercury coming up too. However, as we move on a couple days later, on February 13th, we have Mars conjoining Uranus. And this is a really big deal too, because Mars has been in your 7th house of relationships. Uranus has been right there too. So Uranus is making things extreme right here. Mars has been here for the past couple of weeks now, and Mars can be causing a lot of issues. Mars can be causing a lot of severity. Mars can be causing, like a lot of draining energy. However, with Mars being in Aries, as it's going to conjoin Uranus, this is literally like that idea of Uranus being basically Prometheus in mythology, which is the dude who stole the lightning from the gods to free the people. Mars on top of Uranus is literally that, like that action of stealing of the lightning from the gods to release the people, that sense of liberation, that sense of freedom, that sense of this is the next step forward, that sense of I'm starting to heighten myself. So as this happens in your 7th house, this doesn't always have to deal with you. Yeah. This has to deal with other people. The 7th house is relationships, one-on-one people. It's the 1st house is you, the 7th house is everyone else. So as Mars goes through that area and conjoins Uranus, this is like maybe your partner or someone that you know is kind of like blasting off. They're, I don't want to say liberating yourself. It's more of like you may see your partner have a lot more energy, a lot more freedom, kind of like breaking through to another side type deal. And as Mars is on top of Uranus while it's in Aries too, this could still be causing a little bit of friction and problems in that area. But this is a really good time for you as well to go like, hey, where is my stance in this relationship? And am I ready to either break away from it or take it to the next level? Then the next day, February 14th, on Valentine's Day, Mars goes into Taurus, which is your 8th house. And this is kind of a weird thing. Mars is also going into detriment in Taurus. He doesn't like to be in Taurus. Mars wants to move, he wants to conquer, he wants to attack. And he's in this really fertile earth sign that's very receptive to things and doesn't really pursue them. Mars in Taurus is kind of like trying to move a cow. It doesn't really work all that well. And as Mars is in Taurus, you can feel yourself being a little bit lazy, kind of like not having the energy to really put a lot of effort into things. And it's really going to be focusing on putting your energy into things that that are of the most value to you. That's what Mars in Taurus is about. And as it enters your 8th house of, the 8th house is like death, rebirth in a modern sense, has to do with other people's money and other people's possessions, taxes, inheritances, and things of that nature, occult, weird things. And as Mars is going through that area, and again, Mars can cause a lot of issues. He's a malefic. He can be constructive, however, he does cause problems. Mars going in this area can just be like, outside resources, your partner's resources, maybe it's just be kind of sluggish. It's not happening right now. Things are just going to be going really slow in that area where Mars is kind of causing these issues that are stubborn. They're unmovable. It's a fixed sign. You can't move it. It's dedicated there. So you're probably going to be experiencing some problems with that. And my biggest suggestion is don't don't crumble in the face of adversity. It's just more of take your time on that area and place your energy where where you need to value it the most. You don't have expendable energy right now. It's very limited. It's not, it's, you know what I mean. Anyway, as we move forward 2 days later, we have Venus sextiling Neptune. So as Venus is in Capricorn and she's in your 4th house, you're focusing on your family and your home life and your private life. This is sextiling Neptune where Venus is like, okay, I'm starting to get into a new order of things and things are starting to be more efficient. Things are starting to be more productive. I'm finding the value in creating this efficiency and the structure within the context of my home life, with dealing with issues with your, with your parents or your living situation, whatever it is. Venus is bringing some constructive love into this area, and Neptune being in your 6th house, Venus sextiling it, it's kind of like this is helping you get, where you want to be within the sense of what you're doing every single day, what your habits are, what your routine is. So this is going to be a little bit positive, but it's not it's not a really big emphasis. It's a very subtle thing. As we move forward though, the next day Venus conjoins Saturn. So Saturn's in your 4th house right now, which can be really rough. Saturn, you know, creates limits. He creates barriers. He wants you to be disciplined and mature and handle things in a realistic way. Saturn is quite the teacher in the most like literal example. Venus going on top of Saturn is Venus giving him some TLC in the sense of, okay, I value the rules. I value efficiency and effectivity. I value discipline. I value structure. And as Venus goes on top, like basically conjoins Saturn, where Saturn can create these cold and isolating walls, Venus is kind of decorating it with flowers and making things nice. Basically going, I actually like this. I like how I'm doing these things. This is where I want to address these issues and these barriers, and this is how I want to set up new boundaries. This is where I want to set up new walls. This is where I want to set up new structure and framework. So this is a really, I don't want to say it's a super positive. It's gonna feel tight. It's Saturn. He's got rings. He's putting those rings around Venus. But this is the time to see the value in that, to see the value in what Saturn's doing. As we move forward, the next day on February 18th, we got a couple things going on. We have Mercury conjoining Neptune and entering shadow. So as Mercury conjoins Neptune, things get really blurry in the area of like, hey, you know, your daily habits, your routine, your health, things could be blurry. Things aren't really making sense. There's some confusion up in the air. Mercury enters shadow, so Mercury's going to later direct at this degree that he's at on the 18th. So whatever you got going on the 18th, you're going to feel something, and just know that you're going to come back to that area in a couple weeks here once Mercury comes back to that after retrograding. But a lot of this has to do with where do you need to get clear, where do you need to be a little bit more dualistic, where do you need to see more of the, not necessarily, I don't want to say the boundaries, but where do you need to see things clearly for what they are? You can, instead of going, you know, hey, it's either black or white, it's going, hey, here's everything individually and how do I need to address it? Also on the 18th, Mercury, besides Mercury conjoining Neptune where it gets foggy, Mercury's also going to sextile Saturn, where it's kind of like, Saturn in the 4th house is like, all right, you need to where are you centering yourself? Your home life, family life, private life, that's causing a lot of tension and a lot of responsibility. Mercury on top of Neptune right there, sextiling Saturn is kind of like, okay, like I can definitely see that this my routine, my daily habits and stuff like that is definitely not where I need it to be in order to be more constructive in my family life, in my private life, in my home life. Also on the 18th, Chiron goes into Aries, which is going to be going into your 7th house. So Chiron's locked into that whole healing thing with your relationships. And I did a whole video on Chiron and Aries. Make sure you guys go check that out. That will explain a lot of detail. However, on the 18th as well, the sun goes into Pisces. So as the sun goes into the 6th house, the focus is on what your work is, your sense of service to this world, what you're doing every single day, what your habits and your health and your routine are. That's where the light is, and that's where the attention will be. Moving forward on the 19th, the next day, we have the full moon in Virgo. This is going to be in your 12th house, where the 12th house is of hidden things, repressed parts, unacknowledged parts of yourself, hidden enemies and whatnot. And as the sun's in your 6th house lighting up, you know, what issues could be going on. It's the 6th house, you know, health has to do with issues. The full moon in Virgo is helping you realize what all of the problems are. It's taking off that fog that I always talk about with Neptune. And even though it's not making an aspect to Neptune when the full moon's exact, this full moon in Virgo is helping you realize all of the specifics that you need to realize in order to go, hey, this is what I need to change about my habits. This is what needs to take place in this area as far as, you know, routine, habits, and whatnot. This is what needs to stop being repressed. This is what needs to be acknowledged on a very specific level. However, moving forward a couple days later, we have Venus conjoining Pluto. Now, that's going to be, hold on, work, there we go. On January, oh my gosh, I'm so messed up right now. Okay, February 22nd, that's when Venus is going to conjoin Pluto. So Pluto is been in your 4th house, causing, you know, mass devastation in that area of home life, family life, private life, whatnot. But that's a very underlying subtle theme. Venus is looking at Pluto like, okay, how do I make this a good situation? What can I capitalize out of this horrible thing that happened? How can I look back and address these problems, these things that have arisen, and how can I look at them as something that taught me something that brought you value, something that looked horrible on the surface at first has later on blossomed into something beautiful. That Venus conjoining Pluto part is going to be a big thing to look at. Also on the same day, on February 22nd, we're having Mercury square Jupiter. And as Mercury's in shadow and it's about to go retrograde, it's in its detriment, it's squaring Jupiter. Jupiter's here in Sagittarius going like, hey, you've got a lot of sense of communication. Jupiter's in your third house where we're talking about communication and expression, short distance travel, your immediate environment, like your neighbors and whatnot. As Mercury squares it, this is kind of going, all right, with all of the things that I have in my tool belt, like, I talk a lot about the third house being how you utilize yourself. With all of these tools that you have to utilize yourself with, that's Jupiter being right there. Mercury's squaring it going, how do I use these tools right now? It's kind of like you were taught a certain way to do things, but once you're in the real world experience, it's not really working that way. So just keep in mind that you're going to have to reevaluate, relook at things, really understand things for what they are. And it's going to be a big learning time, a big changing time with the idea of how you utilize yourself and how you utilize the tools in an everyday manner, in the most efficient manner. Then the last two things that we have is Venus conjoining the South Node on February 25th. And Venus conjoining the South Node is kind of like looking back at the past and going like, okay, that served me, and I don't want to say it's time to move on, like it's time to move forward. Venus conjoining the North Node's like the future, and this is what I want, this is what I want to go for. Venus conjoining the South Node is like, this is what worked, and this is what didn't work in the past. This is what value I'm bringing with me on this journey. This is what this is the value I got out of those past experiences, and this is what I need to let go of and detach from, what no longer serves. I don't need it. I don't have any use for it. It's time to let it go in the past. That's the Venus on the South Node stuff. It's going to feel very much like draining energy right there, but it's in Capricorn. It's just sealing off, it's kind of like after you drain a bathtub, you put the seal back on it. Like, I'm not saying it's going to come back up, but, you just put the seal on it. Anyway, the last thing that we have going on is February 27th, Mercury sextiling Venus, where, Mercury's still in shadow, about to go retrograde, sextiling Venus, where it's like, okay, now I'm starting to really get this idea of, what I value, where I'm centering myself in on that idea, and how I can really start being creative about applying that every single day. Again, it's a supportive aspect, but it's not really, I don't want to say super duper important. It's just very minimal. But that's February. Like, February is kind of a weird thing where things kind of change. And it's not super big ups and downs. It's just very much like, well, maybe the Mars on top of Uranus thing. But for the most part, it's just kind of switching into a new narrative, switching into a new story, kind of going off the main story for a little bit until Mercury retrogrades and we go into March. But that's what I got for you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. And I'll be seeing you guys next month.